Today's video is going to venture into the topic of let's not take our hobby life for granted. It's going to take on more of a serious tone. No intro or outro today. No funny clips for that matter. It's going to actually, you know what? I do have a movie clip that pretty much sums up my mood right now.
One thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason.
My grandfather passed away last night. That's my dad's dad. And I know that people like to sometimes make fun of my vulnerability at times on my channel. I do disclose certain things that might be uncomfortable for others to talk about, but that's just part of me being my authentic self, and showing a little bit of vulnerability from time to time just shows that we're all human. Quick story time before I dive into the second part of the video. My dad's dad was a fighter pilot, and my mom's dad was a fighter pilot. My mom's dad was in the Royal Air Force. My mom's British, and my dad's dad obviously in the American Air Force, and this is through the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Actually, how my parents met was because they were both stationed on the same Air Force base in Omaha, Nebraska. Pretty cool. Both of them flew a variety of different fighter jets throughout their career. My mom's dad flew the vaunted British Vulcan bomber. Nobody messed with him. And my dad's dad flew the F-102, which really was an anti-bomber fighter pilot. Shooting down bombers was really the focus there. And he had some amazing stories going way back to the 60s. The Cuban Missile Crisis, if you remember, or if you've done a little bit of history in your time. If you can believe it, we had Soviet bombers coming down our coast, and my grandfather was following them in an F-102. Fortunately, neither one of them had been in dogfights, but they've been in some tricky situations dealing with Soviet bombers, and my dad's dad also flew in Vietnam. So there were planes lost, of course, in Vietnam. He was providing the air cover. And so I know for our family, it was always a little nerve-wracking whenever they left home. Ironically, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, my dad was my youngest son's age. He was about 8 or 9 years old. And they were stationed at Tyndall Air Force Base in Panama City, Florida, which was where my dad was later stationed, where I grew up and started collecting cards. So it all came full circle there in Panama City, Florida. I took both of them on a great trip. We met up in England, both my grandfathers. We went to the Battle of Britain Memorial site there in England, and it was really, really cool to see them there. They obviously came a little bit later. Their careers were a little bit later. But you've got to remember that, you know, when they joined the Air Force, this is post-World War II, not that long after World War II. And really, both militaries needed to resupply pilots, you know, so it was just a different time. But the Battle of Britain, of course, there was the Spitfires, the famous British plane, which is a great documentary. Check it out on either Netflix or Hulu. I think it might be called Spitfire, but it's basically got these vet pilots talking about that time as they battled Nazi Germany, and it just unbelievable times. And don't worry, guys, I'm going to tie this together. I think the big thing that I take away when you have a loss like this is you look back at the different generations, you look back at what they went through and the way that they lived, and then you look at today. You know, you make comparisons. I think every family has foundational pieces. Every great family, let me say that. And these guys were absolute legends, and all the men in our family, my brothers, my uncles, my dad, everyone looks up to these guys, the way that they led their lives. And I think that, again, going back to foundational pieces, strong families have to have foundational pieces, and then the branches grow from there, from the tree. And so for me on a day like this, I just think about how can I get better? How am I going to be a better foundational piece or a part of the tree for the next generation? Of course, I'm talking about my own family. I've got 4 kids, but just anybody that comes across this channel, deals with me in general. How can I do better? I mean, that's really what I'm asking myself today. And I'm also just thinking how lucky I am to be in the position that I am, born at the time when I was relatively peaceful time in the world. And I get to enjoy a great hobby / market that we're in now. And look, my grandfather didn't have the luxury of having a hobby. He didn't have the luxury of collecting cards and talking about it with his buddies. You know, these guys were just dutiful. They had to follow orders, and they did. Unbelievable sacrifice. And so I might not ever be fighter pilot cool, but I'm just going to try to keep on figuring out ways to get to be a better father, better husband, better family member, better hobbyist, all of the above. Let me know in the comments below, who is your foundational person in your family or hobby, in your hobby family? Who is your foundational person? How are we going to get better? How can we strive to get better in a world where, frankly, when I look at the issues of today and then I look at the issues of yesteryear, and it's a little bit embarrassing. I'm here in the United States, and the stuff that we argue over here it's mind-boggling. I can barely watch the news because the issues of today are just so damn stupid. So please put a foundational person within your family or the hobby below, as well as something that you are thankful for about the hobby. There's certainly enough complaining and whining and all the rest of it, and I get it. Look, I don't mind whining about scammy type stuff, but there's literally whining on every single subject under the sun. So what are you actually thankful for? What are you thankful for as far as your life and within this hobby? Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate you guys, and as always, thank you for your support.